More on this. I'm joined by our international affairs commentator, Doug Herbert.
I like that you added the detail about the house where the mother still lives.
Well, that's one of those things that just sticks out when you talk about this story. Doug, tell us what prompted this hearing in the first place.
Broadly speaking, and this might come as a shock to some of our listeners, the Supreme Court of the United States is the only government agency, and it's a branch of government, of course, that does not have an enforceable, emphasis on enforceable code of conduct, code of ethical conduct. Shocking, you might say, but as far back as 2019, okay, 4 years ago, not that far back, Justice Elena Kagan was before a House committee, and she said that the Chief Justice, who was then and now Justice Roberts, was studying the question of whether to come up with an enforceable code, judicial code, that would be applicable to he and his fellow justices. It has never happened. It still hasn't happened. What has triggered this hearing here and now? Why are we standing talking about it today? ProPublica, which is an investigative online outlet in the United States, recently had a blistering expose, basically revealing that Justice Clarence Thomas, the one whose mother is living in that house that was sold to the billionaire, a series of revelations that he had accepted luxury travel, very expensive gifts, and done some real estate property deals with a property tycoon and a guy named Harlan Crow, not just any guy that he was accepting gifts and luxury travel from. Harlan Crow is an extremely staunch Republican, a very big donor to the Republican Party and Republican political groups to the tune of about $10 million. And this is a man that basically flew Clarence Thomas around in his private jet to retreats in Northern California, a luxury super yacht retreat to an island in Indonesia, so on and so forth. And there were also some property deals that I said was struck in which Harlan Crow purchased some properties from Clarence Thomas's family. Now, this comes in a context in which Clarence Thomas's wife had already been under heavy criticism and scrutiny for allegedly being a prominent player in supporting Donald Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election. So Clarence Thomas, front and center on the radar here in the reasons for having this hearing today. But he's not the only one. It's the whole Supreme Court. Now, as currently composed, as you know, Supreme Court is what? It's 9 justices, 6 of whom are conservative, 3 liberal justices, and of those 6 conservative, 3 are Trump appointed. Another justice, Trump appointed in this case, Neil Gorsuch, also under scrutiny, ethical scrutiny for property deals, for selling property shortly after he was confirmed in 2017 to the head of a law firm that has had business before the Supreme Court. You can see the potential, not just the potential. You can take away the word potential. You could see where the possible conflict of interest arises here. That's what this hearing's about. The committee, the Senate committee, is the Judiciary Committee. It's led by a Democrat named Dick Durbin. He's from Illinois, and he basically says that it's right now up to Congress to basically help the Supreme Court justices protect the Congress has to protect the justices from themselves, actually, by having this hearing.
Who's expected to testify at this hearing today? I don't suppose we'll see Clarence Thomas in front of the Judiciary Committee.
We will not see Clarence Thomas. Certainly not. We will also not see, at least not physically see, the Chief Justice, Roberts, who you could argue would have had a prominent role testifying. He did submit a written statement in which he judged that the Supreme Court right now did have enforceable practices and a code of conduct, implying that was sufficient. Dick Durbin, the head of the Senate Judiciary Committee, begs to differ, saying it's not at all sufficient. It's very insufficient. He perhaps should have been there. There is going to be, before there, 2 former U.S. District Court judges, that is federal judges, former federal judges testifying, including a former Attorney General under the former President George W. Bush. You're going to have a law professor from a private university, and you are going to have, I had it somewhere, in addition to that, you're going to have the head of ethics from a campaign watchdog group as well. So a lot of legal experts as well. You've had some other written testimony submitted by a very famous in the U.S. progressive law professor emeritus of Harvard University named Lawrence Tribe. He submitted written testimony, as has a very prominent conservative former federal judge, Judge Lutig. He's also supplied written testimony, heavily in favor of having an ethics code.
Okay, we'll be looking to see what happens. International affairs commentator Doug Herbert. Douglas, thanks as always.